We are now live. And hello and welcome to the Human Quotient. I'm Sudhanshu. I'm the co host and co founder of Antwalk. Human Quotient is our battle, it's our endeavor that in the age of AI, when everybody talks about building artificial intelligence and capabilities around it, we want to talk about human capabilities. We want to talk about the capabilities that companies need to invest in. At the end of the day, it would be the human capabilities who will augment all the technical capabilities that you have to take your organization to their desired goals. And it is our endeavor to constantly bring voices from across the globe to talk about important, pertinent, and contemporary topics. And we have a very important topic that we want to discuss today. And to discuss that with us, we have a very special guest. We have Ashley. Ashley joins us from USA. And Ashley, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to
So,
be
would you
here. Thank you.
like to introduce yourself? You have had a education, no background in education, and now you have a foundation through which you're working around developing leadership capabilities with different organizations. So, would you very quickly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Ashley Martin here. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. As you mentioned, I am a CEO of Leadership Lady, a learning and development company. My background is in education. I started my career as a third grade teacher. So I had the little ones, not
Mhm.
super little ones, but I had 8, 9 year olds, and then I moved my way up and became an administrator of some elementary schools. I worked at 4 different schools. Um, saw a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, and was able to work on a lot of different projects. But one of the biggest things that comes with education is people. And so
Mhm.
while I was there, I got the epiphany that it was time for me to, at some point in time, it was going to be time for me to have my own company. I'd never imagined that it would be a learning and development company at this point in life. But I'm
Mhm.
still educating, and I'm still working with people and still developing people and students. And so that's where we are right now.
Absolutely. And so you have helped you know future leaders, and now you're focusing on when you talk about kids, there are different personality traits that you can see right when they are developing. But today we are going to talk about something very important for organizations today globally, right?
Right.
uh, because what I understand is that businesses are no longer confined to a single market or say a uniform workforce. They operate across borders, they
Right.
deal with diverse cultures, age groups, geographies, which means that leadership is not just a role, but it defines the organization, right? And that is where we'll talk about creative leadership, uh,
Right.
so how to encourage innovation, adaptability, and possibly a fresh perspective. uh, Let me ask you first, in your experience with working with people and leaders, um, how do organizations which work in a global setup look at leadership in general, and why there is this need of having a creative aspect to your leadership?
That's a good question. Creativity, I think, is sometimes an overlooked skill.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's something that people are born with, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's something that can be developed. I really do believe creativity can be developed and
Hmm.
innovation. In today's world, in today's global world,
Hmm.
it's what I've found in working with people and in my own experience. There are a couple of things that really help organizations to be creative. And we're in a time period where creativity is required, right? There are
Yeah.
times where there are things that are tried and true and they work and you should stick with them. And then there are
Mhm.
times where you have to get very creative and innovative. And the pandemic was just one of the many examples and reasons why,
Right.
right? We had to embrace creativity, especially for those who may not consider themselves creative. They probably have found themselves embracing creativity in some way, shape, or form, or innovation. Um, but there's some things that come with that are extremely important, and I think one is a level of um, healthy curiosity, right? Sometimes necessity. Again, the pandemic being an example of that. In certain countries, depending where people are that are
Mhm.
facing war or facing different crises, there's necessity. You know, it said that necessity is the mother of invention, or something along those lines, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so sometimes it's necessity, but sometimes there is a healthy curiosity
Yeah. Okay.
that comes with that.
So the question that I also would, while I remember our conversation earlier, 30 years back, in the last millennium, possibly, leadership used to be a designation. It used to be a nameplate in, and I've seen movies wherein said that, the first rule of working in an organization is that boss is always right. Yeah. And the second rule is, whenever in doubt, refer to the first rule above, right? But those days are long gone, wherein if you are in a managerial position, you are in a leadership position, you cannot just expect your designation to, you know ride you through difficult times. And that is where you need to develop those leadership traits. And you did speak about, and we'll talk about a little later in the conversation, as how we can develop those leadership
Right.
traits. uh, but let me just ask you this question: is, we talk about different leadership aspects: problem solving, being empathetic, having good communication,
Right.
storytelling, and all of that. But if we talk specifically about being creative in your approach to leadership, to people interaction, how does that help me navigate complex challenges?
Hmm. More ways than one.
Uh-huh.
um, I do believe that it serves as a sort of a buffer
Mhm.
from the shock that can come sometimes with navigating complex situations. In some cases, there's shock. There may be, especially for those who they are used to routine. They are used to things being
Mhm.
okay. At this time, I do this. At that time, I do that. At that time, I do that. On this day, I do this. I
Mhm.
think the creativity and being flexible and
Mhm.
being a little bit nimble and agile helps buffer whatever resistance one may have to
Yeah.
that change, which will make it easier for you. I mean, it does a couple of things. It makes it easier for you to make decisions, right?
Mhm.
If where there's less rigidity, you know, you're open to more possibilities. Okay, so it's not just a option A or option B in certain
Mhm.
situations. There are other options. There are other
Absolutely.
options. So it lends itself to a level of ease and grace, I think, when it comes to decision making. That's one way. I think the other way that this can help, especially those who are global leaders, it can help you connect better with the people you're working with, whether
Mhm.
it's it's a client or whether it's a team. It's a I realized this. I mean, even while I was in education and of course in business, like there is just something there's a little extra that you need when you want to engage with people that you're not used to being around all the time. When you're engaging in with cultures, when you're engaging
Mhm.
with different cultures, there's a certain lens that you have to put on, right? It's
Absolutely.
not a facade. It's just a lens. It's a different lens. And then after a while, it becomes organic and it becomes natural. But you have to be willing to have a level of humility, right? A level of humility. You have to be willing to listen. So
Mhm.
that's where the active listening comes in, and listening in the emphasis on listening to understand first before responding,
Yeah.
right? Like you really, I really want to understand what you're saying. I really want to understand what it is that you're dealing with so the best solution can come to the forefront. I really want to understand it. And then I'll respond. But let me understand it first. Let us understand it first and make sure we're on the same page about that before we just jump head first into
Yeah,
saying, this, that, and the other.
absolutely. No, so we have a small startup
Mhm.
based out of India. We are based out of Bangalore, and we started this journey 5 years back. And every step of the way, there are very unique challenges, not something that you're prepared for. And that is what people tell us, that entrepreneurship is a journey wherein no two challenges are similar. Every challenge is unique. With
Right,
every passing day, you are confronted with situations, you're confronted with problems that you possibly would not have dealt before, which
right,
also means that the solutions that you need to come up with have to be different. And
absolutely.
of course, it requires problem solving, but it also requires, as you said, deep listening skills. I remember when we got stuck and we were looking at, what's the next, no what is we wanted to make a small change in how we were approaching things. We And that time we had run an internship drive, and we had 20 young interns in our team. uh, and we just did a focus group discussion with all the 20 interns, and the ideas that came during those group discussion have
Right.
contributed immensely to what
Absolutely.
Antwerp is today. So I understand the perspective that you just brought in, as being empathetic, being a problem solver, but all before that, all being a very very patient listener and thinking before responding. So all of these are very important leadership traits. Now let's talk about, in a post, though in US it has been, we have been global for some time.
Hmm.
Post COVID, however, it has been accelerated, wherein even from India, you work with global teams. You work with people from different cultures, different age groups. You work with different geographies, of course, right? So how is the role of a leader evolving now? How do you build a cross-cultural leadership capability in yourself if you're especially handling teams across different geographies?
Right. So so let's look at that in different pieces. I think first, I mean, developing a global team, again, requires a level of humility,
Hmm.
because you need to understand yourself, right? You need
Hmm.
to understand your strengths. You understand your areas of growth. You need to
Hmm.
understand your team, their strengths, the areas of growth, and knowing how to embrace the differences and how what you need, what needs to be strengthened and what needs to be developed.
Hmm.
Um, I also I really believe that you need to have a good grasp, if I'm answering the question
Hmm.
correctly, a good grasp on what works for you and your team and what doesn't, and what's
Okay.
going to work for you and your clients. And like, it's sometimes it's not always one size fits all
Hmm.
when it
Absolutely.
comes to solutions and or things that you're just dealing with within your business, or in your career. It's not always one size fits all.
Yeah.
So you really need to have a level of awareness,
Hmm.
a level of
So
awareness.
how does this creative leadership help challenges posed by, say, this cultural diversity in global teams? When we work with teams across the globe, uh, the diversity is just beyond the language or the color. It's more global, and so how can, say, my approach to leadership, how being creative in leadership help me address challenges posed by this by cultural global cultural diversity in global teams?
Well, it's gonna. I think I mean, it'll help you again relate to your team, your client better, but it'll help you with the cover. It'll help you up your communication game, right? So not
Yeah.
just your active listening. It'll help develop that, which coined as your cultural metacognition,
Hmm.
which is extremely important. Metacognition is like thinking about how we think. You need that culturally, especially if you're dealing in if you're in global settings. You need that culturally. And so developing that cultural metacognition is extremely important as a leader. so it helps you reach goals. It helps you get the job done. Um,
Hmm.
and it helps fulfill that sense of purpose, whatever, driving your mission, driving your business, your vision. Um, I really think that developing that cultural metacognition gives you some
Hmm.
safety net, right? Because sometimes when you're in global situations, or even if you're it's a local situation that where there may be a different culture, um,
Hmm.
and there, you want a level of peace or camaraderie or cordiality or civility. Sometimes people are afraid of offending others,
Yeah.
right? And I think most humans are not in the business of wanting to offend people. But sometimes there's that I don't want to say this or I don't want to ask this because I might offend whomever. Or there may be a genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or again, that's culturally relevant because in some cultures, even to ask certain questions is not okay. So it's good
Yeah.
to, it's really good to do your homework. Um,
Yeah.
before you engage with certain cultures, but making sure that there's again, you're eliminating those barriers to work getting done
Hmm.
by embracing, okay, hey, there's something I may or may not know. How do I approach this? What's my approach?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And one thing that I believe, US being a cultural melting pot, and India itself, a lot of people say that, India is kind of like a euro zone in itself. We have 25 different, we have around 28 states. All of them speak different languages.
Wow.
So, say for example, I am born in a different part of the country where we speak a different language, and I work in a part of the country where there are huge cultural differences as well. However, growing up in an environment which is more of a cultural melting pot kind of gives you some sensitivity, if I were to say, that
Right. Absolutely.
some exposure to people of different background, different cultures.
Hmm.
However, of course, doing your homework is, of course, very very important in a global context. uh, One thing that I talk when we talk about this, people talk about, being innovative, uh, bring innovative solutions onto the table. How, what are some strategies that people can use, the leaders can use, to inspire innovation across multiple teams? What is it that, um, I, as a leader who is leading, cross cultural team, how can I foster a sense of innovation in my team?
In your team. This is a good question. And those are the kinds of things what company helps with. But I think again, um, one of the things is in allowing a level of healthy curiosity. So
Hmm.
if someone has a question, having that however you need to communicate it, hey, you can ask questions here. You can ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. um Being very intentional about creating opportunities for cultivating creativity, right, and
Hmm.
meaningful activities. I've heard this before. It was said at some point in time that Google actually had time during the week for certain team members and or certain departments to just think, to explore, to create, right? Even in some schools, they may have lab time where it's like it's dream time or innovation time. It's just time for people to explore, to create, to
Yeah.
come up with things. So you can be very intentional about like, hey, all right, here, or whether it's like Google on Fridays or at whatever time, you have an hour or 2 hours to go create, to problem solve, to dream, to think. Or if it's okay, 30 minutes every day, I'm gonna schedule my own innovation time. I'm gonna schedule my own dream or play time, right? So just creating and scheduling that time to explore and to play. I
Hmm.
think you can also this is something I had a writing coach years ago, because I write as well. And years ago, she told me this, and I'm going to share this with you all. She said to schedule an artist date. Yeah. So yeah, you schedule dates with significant others. Schedule an
Hmm.
artist date, and that will keep that creativity in you stirred up. it allows your, so to speak, your creative juices and your innovative juices to flow. So whether that's once a month or once a week or every 2 weeks, how whatever that looks like for you, once a quarter, schedule an artist day. Go to the museum, right? Go to the park. Go to where maybe there's an exhibit. Go somewhere where you just, I mean, you get inspired, and
Mhm.
hold to that time and embrace that time, because it'll stimulate you in the right way. Another thing I
Mhm.
think is very important that leaders can do for their teams, for themselves and their team: embrace the right amount of rest and reset. And most creatives will tell you, trying to most that I know, I'll put that like that. Most that I know will tell
Mhm.
you that there's a healthy level of rest and resetting, and what I call self stewardship, that is extremely important, um,
Mhm.
to continue to allow creativity to do what it does. And we are in certain places, there is, promotion of hustle culture. Hustle culture, got to get it done. Team no sleep. Like, body was not built to not sleep. The body was built to rest for a certain amount of time daily. And for some, there's a day or two set aside for rest. And we're human. Even in this AI age, we are still human. We're not machines. And so I think it's extremely important, if you want to grow creative abilities within your team and innovation, just allowing that right embrace of rest and reset, right?
Yep.
Because you can work wonders if you get the right quality rest, even within the day. I mean, think very granularly within the day. You
Mhm.
get a good 6 to 8 hours of sleep, of rest, you can move and do what you need to
Yeah.
do with the other time. So that embracing of that, as opposed to not sleeping or this, that, and the other, I think is important for leaders and their teams.
Oh, I just I was making pointers, and because all of them are so valid, especially the last part of rest and reset is, say for example, I in my personal experience, what I've realized is, if I'm stuck on a problem and I've tried, I've exhausted all my cognitive abilities getting to an answer, if you just say, if I either catch a power nap, or I go talk to a friend who doesn't talk about work, who doesn't talk about problem at hand. If I just spend some time with my daughter where she cracks a few jokes, tells about what her day at school has been, it just kind of helps me reset and come back to the work and come back to the problem in a totally different way, right?
Right.
So I understand that aspect of rest, and of course, I have been there, you would have been there, and I'm very sure everybody listening in would have been there. If your rest is not proper, you're at it trying to solve a problem. you know, Getting rest helps you get your thought process together. So I understand that bit, and um, allowing this artistic date, this is a new concept that I really like, and I would like to possibly practice it someday to keep the innovation alive. uh, the other thing that you also asked about, the allowing people to, in different ways to express themselves, ask questions and other things. The other thing that I am personally, I like it a lot in terms of bringing innovative solutions, is there is a concept of quality circles. It has originated in Japan, where Japan has some wonderful manufacturing practices, which are now being adopted globally in different contexts. Like agile methodology has evolved from there. To some extent, design thinking, problem solving has evolved from there. Similarly, this quality circle is a wonderful concept wherein what you do is, you periodically get different stakeholders meet in a setup wherein they just think about a problem, and it means all stakeholders, and despite, irrespective of their hierarchy. Say for example, you could have some people from, shop floor, some people from HR, some people from marketing, somebody from the leadership, somebody from the sales, somebody from logistics, all coming and talking about one thing, right? That one thing could be, how do I drive my sales numbers up, or how do I bring my defect down, or
Right.
different problem areas. And if you, because you really don't know how different people look at problems. So there is one thing that I have practiced it, and it is really
That's good.
wonderful. That I have got some results out of it as well. Okay.
Right. The different
Right.
perspectives.
Absolutely. Okay. Now we talk. You spoke about in the beginning about pandemic shaping leadership, right? Um, if I ask you this question, that going forward, right? Uh, we spoke about AI. We spoke about ability to work with AI. All of those are there. But what creative skills do you think are going to be essential for future leaders? People, right from say, some people could be looking at stepping into a leadership position. Somebody could be 20 years into leadership, but still trying to say, reinvent yourself. So, what skill set do you think is important for people or leaders to develop as a way forward?
Well, moving forward, that's a good question. I think I mentioned the word agility.
Yes.
I also believe adaptability is
Hmm.
extremely important. Being able to navigate, right? Being agile, being flexible, nimble, but also being able to navigate different environments is where adaptability comes into play.
Hmm.
I also think a level of resilience is important, right? Um, we talked about active listening and communication skills won't ever go away. Extremely important. Um,
Yep.
but I think to add to that, and the creative part perhaps comes in. Well, we I think we, especially right now where there was a lot of high stakes, a
Hmm.
lot of high stakes happening, and moving forward, we need to know when we need to speak up, and we need to know when we need to be quiet. We need to know when we need to speak up, and when we just need to and then listen. But when we need to open our mouths and speak, that's important as well. That's extremely
Hmm.
important, and I think that'll help. I think being the willingness to not have only empathy, but the willingness to hear someone else out who you may not necessarily empathize with, right? But just being able to hear somebody else out, they may be in a different world. You may not understand at all what it is. You may or may not be able to relate to them, but to the ability to, and the humility and the compassion to be able to hear them out is
Hmm.
extremely important to develop moving forward. Because there are people that we'll meet, that we'll connect with. We may not be able to relate to them. We can probably find something we connect about, but that
Hmm.
shouldn't stop you from doing the work that you're doing, because it'll probably touch them in some way, shape, or form. But just being able to listen to somebody else, I
Yeah.
think is key. I think that's
So
key, especially in global
I was
leadership.
talking to somebody. They brought a very similar point, and we are working with a big manufacturing company in India, and they said the ability to hear somebody out, despite of their contradicting, their views could be contradictory to yours. How do you still hear that person out is very, very important. How do you give that person the space to speak up? You as a leader can just dismiss it, saying that, okay,
Right.
it doesn't align with my vision, doesn't align with the organization's vision, so you can keep your mouth shut. But that then curbs creative ideas to emerge.
Right.
So that ability to show empathy and hear people out, coming from different perspective, different, you know could be different views, different experiences, that is very, very important. But actually the question is, we are all at the end of the day, we are talking on the human quotient about humans, but we also know that we are all human at the end of it. And
Absolutely.
listening contradictory views, well, everybody wants to talk more, but say possibly listen less. How do as leader, and especially one thing that it's funny the way that lady was talking to me. She was saying, so Dhanshu, we're talking about senior leaders in her organization, and they say that they feel that after 15, 20 years of hard work, finally they are in a leadership position, and they feel that they have arrived. You know, and for them to say that now you need to listen to others, possibly people who are 20 years younger to you, is going to be challenging. How do people develop those things?
Well, that's a good question. I think
Mhm.
it requires filtering. So focusing and filtering. So back to something you mentioned before. When you have those contradictory views and you're like, okay, well, what do I need to tune into or tune out because that doesn't apply? It does. It requires a level of filtering.
Yep.
Um, it requires a level of filtering, and it takes time to develop. Okay, hey, the sort of acumen. For some, it's a gift, but sometimes it's an acumen that's developed where you're just like, okay, I need to listen to this or this I don't need to listen to. Right? It takes time in that focusing and in that filtering of those particular things. And I think the second part of what you asked um is a lot about connecting with different generations, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Um where there can come into play again, like you mentioned, the focus group. I've had interns myself. They've been younger and they provide good insight and good feedback. Um, that that feedback is needed. That helps us move forward. Um, but also, you want to make sure that you're meeting their needs. You're meeting whoever the end users needs. And of course, that includes your own needs and your team's needs. But also, there comes a time where, like, it is very helpful to have those sort of not just feedback, but that reverse mentoring or that managing up. Again, two other I mentioned some titles of books throughout the time we've been talking. But there is such a concept of called reverse mentoring where and managing up where somebody may be of a less position or maybe they may be your boss, your CEO, and you have a manager or you have an employee who might be a key player, and there's some stuff that they can let you know and inform you about to help again drive vision, drive the mission, reach goals. I think that's important to have those types of whether it's a
Mhm.
program and or a time period again where you just whether it's a focus group or you
Mhm.
actually have a program or you have some sort of mentoring mentee program or reverse mentoring or you cultivate that time to get that feedback.
Yep.
Most times most times mentoring is from this position to that position or this age to that age. Sometimes it works the other way as well.
So my question now is, like, while we're talking about mentoring, we're talking about the building skills. How should organizations look at? Uh, One of the things that organizations, though a lot of organizations look at building leadership programs, they have MDPs, they have different leadership programs that they invest in. What would your advice to companies, people from LNOD fraternity, what would your advice be? How should organizations look at building leadership skills? Because it is a global challenge, and we keep talking to people across the globe. They say that most of the things that we experience at work, that is, we are not trained for it, and that is the unfortunate reality of work. Most of us go through education which we never use in our professional lives. uh, so how can companies be possibly make their leadership, the capability development for leaders, more contextual and relevant for leaders? How should they look at building capabilities for their leaders?
The relevance is key, right? The relevance is key. The use of the development is key. I don't think people want to, we don't go to school or go to training or learn to not put it to use. That information is to be put to use. So that relevance and defining that relevance is the first start.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to develop your leaders. Why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
And then from why, like, what do you envision for them? Are they going to take over in the next couple of years? Are they going to help? Growth, if you don't know, that's okay. If you don't know yet, that's okay, but at least start with something. So why are we having this? And then what do I envision for them? What do you envision for them? What do you envision for yourself? What do you envision for your company? And then from there, what's the purpose of it? What's the purpose? What else is the purpose of it? Is it to develop, to fine tune? And what I mean by that, because the difference between the asking the first why and then, third step purpose, is it to cultivate their technical skills? Is it to cultivate their soft skills? Is it to cultivate all of those things? Is it, you want to get that specific and okay, this is specifically for helping, um Anna develop her team and to learn how to manage her team in the US and her team in India and her team perhaps in South Africa better. Those particular teams, right? And then you can map out other things from there, put them on their specific journey, like you all have in your organization. So I think you have to, again, that this is the big picture why. What do you envision for that kind of program? And then the purpose for those particular leaders and or group of people that you're going to be developing. That's it. That's key. It'll and that will help build that relevance, and that will help buy them in, and they will see the fruit, so to speak, of their labor. You'll see the fruit of your investment because it wasn't just, oh, I'm going to a meeting or I'm going to a training. I'm taking this class just to take it. No, this stuff actually works for you. It can actually help you. You'll see the results from it.
This relevancy is so important, because, say for example, we com- all organizations, they exist for a purpose. That purpose could be that, I want to, this year I grew at 15 and the next year I have to grow at 20.
Hmm.
I'm in North America right now, I want to add a few geographies in the next year. It could be global warming for somebody. It could be to reduce carbon emissions. There could be multiple objectives that an organization need to achieve, right? And then, of course, when we talk about organizations achieving their goals, it is at the end of the day people in those organizations who achieve those goals. So it has to be drilled down to that level, saying why should you even invest in
Hmm.
building such capability? As you rightly said, am I going to manage a team in South Africa in the next 6 months? And do I have the right capabilities to do it?
Right.
Or I could be just, now my organization needs to grow with this, say for example, in a US context where there is some economic uncertainty. You could be talking that, hey, we are going to acquire a company but possibly work in the same budget. So how do I approach that challenge wherein I would possibly be taking, newer responsibilities given the same number of resources that I have? So those challenges need to be defined really well for
Right.
leaders, as you were saying, that context, the why of why you should even say spend 2 days, 2 work days attending a training program. Why should you even do that, right? And then of course we need to also understand what aspect of your personality, and that is where
Hmm.
Antwalk, the people from US, uh, no, Antwalk has been on this journey, and we have worked extensively with people here in India, wherein we help them define this end to end. And the name Antwalk, again, to briefly talk about it, it's inspired from the walk of ants. Who, when they walk in a very straight, neat line, following the ant in front. So the idea of learning at Antwalk is learning from people who have been there and done that. Just like,
Right. Right.
Ashley, she was talking, you were talking about your experiences and how you are helping companies, right? So we will talk more about, how we could build leadership, and this is a dialogue that we have started. But if I can, also ask you a couple of questions around different nuances of leadership, say for example, especially talking about, say, age diversity. We spoke about that briefly, and you said that, one size fits all no longer applies, right? um, a lot of people here specifically, you know, I have leaders come up to us and say that, from baby bloomers to Gen Z, there is a different motivation, there are different work habits, there are different communication preferences. All of that require leaders to be, I would say, listening is one aspect, but I would say that you need to be open to communication coming from all angles, right? So especially companies talking where younger generation is coming into the workforce, how should leaders possibly approach that as well?
Whew, such an important important topic, especially now. Um, I think leaders have to set aside the time to understand the generations themselves. Um, whether that is in your everyday life, connecting very intentionally with people of different generations, whether, they're boomers or other millennials or Gen Z or silent, this quote unquote silent generation that's not really that's silent. They're living longer. People are living longer than
Yeah.
I think than in the past. And then the little ones that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, but I believe they're the alpha generation. Um, it's
My vocabulary is not that good on that. It's
yeah, it's because there's so there are many there are different schools of thought.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be intentional about it. So you can start right where you are in your in your community. Pay attention. Pay attention to how communication is, the communicating, the encoding and the decoding. Pay attention to the proclivities of the different generations.
Mhm.
You can also be very intentional. There's a lot of resources. I love this. There's a resource from McKinsey and Company that
Mhm.
is very, very, very focused on helping people navigate generational workplace differences and how do you use that to your advantage and not to your detriment is important. I was just reading an article about Gen Z and about Gen Z's trust for brands, and the characteristics of those things. So I think again the intentionality and first understanding the generations and
Mhm.
then determining how you can connect generations. That could
Absolutely.
be, how what is connecting generations look like? Is that a focus group within my company from somebody from each generation around the topic, just like you have from different departments?
Yeah.
You could even do that from different generations.
Mhm. Yeah. So say for example, the reason I brought this up is in India specifically, and I'm very sure that this would be a challenge in other developing countries as well. That the new generation coming in the workforce is financially more secure than ever before. Uh, the concept of, say, generational wealth did not exist in India because of our colonization, right?
Okay.
This is for possibly the first time ever we have a workforce that is going to acquire wealth from their parents and they're financially possibly secure. So they don't, working for monetary or financial reasons alone is not a motivation for them.
Right. Right.
And that is where we were talking to a sales head of a big manufacturing company, and he was saying that so Darshan, what I see is that I need to make this company run. That is my responsibility. But the person in front of me, with people on whom I rely to run this company, they are not motivated by the same things that I was. And the carrot and the stick approach possibly is not going to work as much, because forget the stick. Just not, it's not only about the HR policies, it's just the people's approach has changed, right? We spoke about people being so, people have different, leaders have different challenge. You still need to drive your organization to its goal, but you need to also be very, very cognizant of what people's goals are going to be. How am I going to take this person on his or her professional journey while I take my organization to the next growth? So
Right.
that is where, aligning people capabilities, personal aspirations, all of that is going to be very, very important, uh, as we get into the leadership.
Right.
So
Right.
So this is interesting. These are interesting times. We talk about working with AI. We talk about
Right.
working with Gen Zs. I'm very sure we'll talk about working with even younger generation going
Right.
coming forward. So, and that is where we have developed this product that we have. And I'll to briefly take 1 minute to just share my screen, and if with your permission, actually, if I can talk
Absolutely.
about what we do at Antwork, is that we help organizations think end to end about different roles. So here we call this a skill taxonomy or a success profile of a leader. And when we say that, hey, you want to be successful in your leadership role, but you need to have a visionary perspective, you need to have an innovative mindset. Of course, you need to be customer centric, but you need to be as a no you need to be a mentor, you need to be a leader as well. At the same time, focusing on more functional skills like time management, delegation, problem solving, and we do it across levels. So we have right from, say, a first time manager, person who are newly promoted into leadership managerial roles, to somebody who goes all the way to senior, 15 to 20 plus years of experience. We have our solutions for all such level of leadership. We have focused coaching intervention for CXOs as well. And the idea is that, as you said, is that first is define what it takes to be successful in the role that you have.
Right.
The second is you also need to understand where your blind spots are. Blind spots are, when we talk about, there is a two by two of known and known unknown to you and others as well. And there is now, it's not just unknown to you or others, it is also because the industry itself has changed a lot. The technological advancement have gone up so much that there is, despite of what career stage you are in, there's always a scope. I wouldn't say just scope, but a need of looking of how you stand, where do you stand in terms of the capabilities needed. And that is what Antwork has done. We have helped organizations define these success profiles, we have helped them measure it, we have helped them map it to different KPIs, so that you understand that if you build, say, why should you invest in a decision making capability, how is it going to help me develop my KPIs better. Okay. Why should I, say, talk about building interpersonal skills, because it is going to help me in employee engagement. Why should I talk about stakeholder management? We talk a lot about stakeholder management. Why should I even think of stakeholder management? Because it is going to improve my operational delivery. And then, of course, we have end-to-end programs, working with, as I said, the philosophy of Antwork is to learn from ants who have been there and done that. So, actually, as we conclude this, I understand we have overshot the time that I've taken from you, so I'll be very, very cognizant. Uh, your last, I would say, the closing remarks on how should leaders look at building creative leadership abilities in themselves for all the budding leaders out there. What would your remarks be?
Wow. Don't forget your oxygen mask. If you have ever been on a plane, an airplane, when we are before you take off, more often than not, on most airlines, I've never been on a plane where they haven't done this. They're in when we're reviewing safety instructions for a safe flight, there is the time period where a flight attendant will walk you through what to happen in case the air pressure drops, right? In case something happens with the air, we need our oxygen to breathe. And they'll instruct you to put your oxygen mask on first,
Yeah.
right? Before helping somebody else. So if there are two people, if there's a child or something, and the air mask drops, the oxygen mask drops, you put yours on first, and then you assist the other person if they need assistance. It is extremely important that in your leadership journey that you understand, do not neglect yourself. The work that we do is about others. You are included in that. In you are included in that.
Yeah.
I've seen people, you know, sort of self-sacrifice themselves which is can be a noble thing. And sometimes sometimes it's not wise. So the wisdom, the hmm, golden nugget I would sort of leave with you is to make sure that you are stewarding yourself and you're putting your oxygen mask on. Keep your oxygen mask on. Again, embracing that rest and reset, engaging in that healthy curiosity, going on those artist dates if you need to, going on a date with your significant other if you need to, um, having that time, scheduling that spa appointment, turning the TV off every now and then, right? Dancing. Some people just need to go outside and dance. Just go outside and dance. Um, Playing with your scheduling time if you have to. Schedule time with your child. See what's going on with them. You know what's going on beyond. Okay, what's going on with homework? What's going on with school? What's going on with them? How are they doing? But also for yourself, oxygen mask. Do not forget to put your oxygen mask on. Don't forget to put it on.
Yeah. That's another topic, that is self care. It is very, very important in terms. Now, I know a lot of leaders, and this concluding our conversation that we have had, you take so much, especially people in senior leadership. You have to manage your board, you have to manage the expectations of your company, you have to know you have fiduciary responsibilities. Of course, you have expectations from your spouses, kids, all of that. But how do you take that one person who delivers that all, which is you yourself? It's a wonderful, wonderful conversation to have, possibly for some other day, because we are
Right.
running out of time.
Yeah.
However, let me conclude by saying this: is that geographically, the need for creative leadership is amplified. Um, by this remote work, cross cultural teams. Now, leaders have to unite teams, work across, be sensitive, motivate others, take everybody along, foster innovation and collaborativeness. So, leadership today is about being creative, being embracing, being empathetic, fostering innovation, driving adaptability, taking your words across different teams. So, thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your thoughts. And I have been, for the last 50 minutes, I would say, listening very intently. And it was an absolute pleasure to hear you. And as we now sign off, to all those people who have joined in, you have a wonderful day ahead wherever you are. And till the next episode, when we bring another thought leader to talk about an issue and a topic which is relevant to you. Actually, thank you so much. All
You're
those who
welcome.
have joined in, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.